This woman would pick on me for anything, but her obsession with my mailbox was another story. First, it was an accident, then it became routine. Every week there she was, bumping into and knocking over my box. But I got tired of it. If she wanted to destroy my mail now, she'd have to deal with something indestructible. And my friend, her reaction when she saw the new model was just perfect. If someone had told me a year ago that I would get into an epic conflict over a simple mailbox, I would have laughed and called them crazy. But here I am, telling the story of how my neighbor, Hoa, managed to turn a harmless object into a battlefield. And if you think I'm exaggerating, it's because you haven't met the kind of person who can lose sleep over a piece of mail that isn't even theirs. It all started with little things. My mailbox was on the edge of my property, like any other in the neighborhood, but for some reason that only God and her ego can explain, Hoa decided that my box was a personal offense against the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The first incident was discreet. One day I went out to collect my mail and noticed that the box was a little crooked. No big deal. It could have been the wind, a child playing, anything. But then it happened again and again. And just when I thought I was paranoid, the truth fell into my lap. One day I decided to install a security camera in front of my house, not because of the mailbox specifically, but because the neighborhood had been experiencing a few thefts, and I thought it was worth it. On the first day of recording, I went to check the images, and there it was, in the middle of the night, flashlight in hand, kicking my mailbox. Yes, kicking. A middle-aged woman dressed in a flowery robe, stomping on my mailbox as if she were fighting for the freedom of an oppressed nation. For a second, I was in shock, but then I started laughing because it couldn't be real. Now, any normal person would call the police or at least confront them, but not me. I wanted to see how far this madness would go. So I simply reinstalled the mailbox the next day without saying anything and waited. The next night, she showed up again. This time, she didn't kick. She just pushed with her hands and walked away as if nothing had happened. But I already knew that this was going to become a routine, and that's when I decided that I needed to put a stop to this nonsense once and for all. If Hoa wanted a war against my mailbox, then I was going to make sure I won, and I would win in style. Around this time, my old friend Mike moved into the neighborhood. Mike wasn't just any friend. He was a retired Marine with a particular distaste for bullies. When I showed him the footage of Hoa's midnight attacks, his face turned from amused to determined. "You know what," Mike said, leaning back in my living room chair, "I had a similar problem in my old neighborhood. Some kids kept knocking over my garden gnomes. Let me help you set up a proper surveillance system, one that'll catch her from multiple angles." Mike's expertise was exactly what I needed. Within a day, we had 3 cameras strategically placed to capture any mailbox assault from every possible angle. But Mike wasn't done. "You know what would really drive her crazy?" he said with a mischievous grin. "Motion-activated lights, bright ones. If there's one thing I've learned throughout my life, it's that some people just don't understand when they're fighting a battle they've already lost. And Hoa, she was the queen of that kind of people. After watching recordings of her kicking, shoving, and on one particularly hilarious occasion, trying to rip my mailbox open with her bare hands, I realized that this woman wasn't going to stop. So since she wanted to play, I was going to have some fun too. I researched for a few days, trying to find the ultimate solution. I thought about concrete, I thought about reinforced steel, I even thought about installing a shock system, but then I remembered that I liked my freedom and didn't want to be sued. Then I found the perfect answer: titanium. Does it sound like overkill? Yes, but I was past the point of caring. I made a few calls and found a locksmith who could do the job. I ordered a pure titanium post and a mailbox resistant to impact, corrosion, and of course, crazy neighbors. If she wanted to kick something, let her kick that. Mike was all in on the plan. "Let's add one more thing," he suggested. "Let's put a small American flag on it. If she messes with that, it's not just property damage, it's disrespecting the flag." I wasn't sure about that part, but Mike was insistent. "Trust me," he said. "I've dealt with people like Hoa before. They think they're patriots, but they're the first to trample on what the flag represents when it suits them." The next morning, Hoa drove past my house while I was supervising the installation. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and stared at me. Her face was a mixture of shock and sheer indignation. I could almost hear the voice in her head saying, "What's that idiot up to now?" I pretended not to notice her and continued my work. The locksmith installed the structure on the ground with reinforced concrete, ensuring that the mailbox wouldn't come out of there even with an explosion. Mike stood beside me, arms crossed, nodding approvingly as the small American flag was attached to the side of the mailbox. Once the job was done, I stood there appreciating my masterpiece. It was beautiful, brilliant, indestructible. But the best thing of all, now it was her turn to act, and I was waiting. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A young woman approached my house, looking nervous. Her name was Lily, and as it turned out, she was Hoa's daughter. "I'm so sorry about my mother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's always been difficult, but lately it's gotten worse. She's obsessed with control, and your mailbox somehow became her fixation." I invited Lily in for coffee, and she explained that Hoa had always been controlling, but since her husband left her 3 years ago, her behavior had escalated. Lily had moved out as soon as she could, unable to handle her mother's increasingly erratic behavior. "I've tried to get her to see a therapist," Lily confessed, "but she refuses. She thinks everyone else is the problem." I felt a twinge of sympathy, not for Hoa, but for her daughter who clearly carried the burden of her mother's actions. "I understand," I told Lily, "but I can't let her keep destroying my property." "I know," Lily said. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying to help, and to warn you, when my mother feels challenged, she escalates, always." The next evening, I prepared my coffee, sat comfortably on the sofa, and opened the security camera app. Mike came over to watch the show with me. I already knew she wouldn't resist, and I was right. Around 2:00 in the morning, here came Hoa, flowery robe, flashlight in hand, the same look as someone about to commit a crime. She approached the mailbox as if she were about to face a monster. She looked around, making sure no one was watching, and then the blow came. I saw it in slow motion. She lifted her foot with all the force in the world and kicked. And my friend, what happened next was pure poetry. The impact was so violent that she was practically thrown backwards. Hoa lost her balance, stumbled, and fell sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, holding her foot with both hands. The lantern rolled away. She lay there writhing in pain, muttering swear words that would have made even a sailor blush. I watched, sipping my coffee, smiling like someone who has just seen the best episode of a series. Mike was laughing so hard he nearly spilled his beer. "That's what we call instant karma in the Marines," he chuckled. She stood up with difficulty, limping. She looked at the mailbox as if hoping that this time she had managed to destroy it. But there it was, impeccable, immovable, untouched. Hoa had lost, and for the first time she knew it. But then something unexpected happened. As Hoa limped away, another figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man in a suit, at 2 a.m., which was strange enough. He approached the mailbox, examined it closely, and took several photos with his phone. He then looked directly at one of our cameras, smiled coldly, and walked away. "Who the hell is that?" Mike asked, sitting up straight. "I have no idea," I replied, feeling a chill run down my spine. "But I don't like it." The next morning, I received a certified letter. It was from the Homeowners Association. A complaint had been filed against my mailbox, claiming it violated neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. The letter was signed by the HOA president, a name I didn't recognize, Harold Kim. "This is ridiculous," Mike said when I showed him the letter. "Your mailbox is perfectly fine. It's just stronger." I decided to call the HOA office to get more information. The secretary sounded uncomfortable when I asked about Harold Kim. "Mr. Kim is our new president," she explained. "He was elected last month when the previous president stepped down unexpectedly." "And let me guess," I said, "he's friends with Hoa." The secretary paused. "I really couldn't say, sir." But her silence said everything. If I thought the mailbox war was going to end there, I was wrong. Hoa was too stubborn to accept a simple defeat. She could have walked out of there, swallowed her pride, and got on with her life. But no, this woman didn't know how to lose. And like any good villain who has been dealt a heavy blow, she decided to double down. The problem was that now she was limping. The next morning, I went out to get the newspaper, and right away I saw the most wonderful scene in the world. Hoa sitting on the bench on the balcony with a bag of ice on her foot. Yes, the woman who had tried to destroy my mailbox in the dead of night was now sitting there with her face closed, recovering from her own stupidity. If it had been anyone else, I might have worried. But after months of this woman making my life hell, all I could feel was a joy that's hard to describe. She pretended not to see me, but you could feel the hatred radiating from her. The whole neighborhood knew she had done something. But the best was yet to come. In the late afternoon, while I was washing my truck, I saw a different car pull up in front of her house, a shiny black sedan with a license plate that I immediately recognized. Lawyers. Now things were getting interesting. I already knew she was going to try some desperate move, but I had no idea it would be so pathetic. Mike, who was helping me wash the truck, recognized the man in the suit immediately. "That's the guy from the video," he exclaimed. "The one who came after Hoa and took pictures of your mailbox." I squinted to get a better look. "You're right, but he's not just any lawyer, that's Harold Kim." Mike whistled low. "So the HOA president is her lawyer. That's a conflict of interest if I ever saw one." The next day, an official notice arrived in my mail. She was suing me. Yes, she was accusing me of intentionally installing a dangerous structure to cause harm to third parties. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The woman had spent months destroying my property, kicked over a titanium pole of her own free will, and now she wanted to make me pay for it. I laughed so hard I had to sit down, but that's okay. If she wanted to play that game, then I was going to play it. I showed the lawsuit to Mike, who immediately pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my nephew. He's a lawyer who specializes in property disputes. This is exactly his kind of case." Mike's nephew, David, arrived the next day. Unlike Harold Kim's slick appearance, David was more casual, with rolled-up sleeves and a pragmatic attitude. He reviewed our evidence, particularly the videos, and smiled. "This is what we call a frivolous lawsuit," he explained. "She doesn't have a case. But here's what concerns me. The HOA president acting as her lawyer is a clear conflict of interest. We need to expose that." David suggested we not only defend against the lawsuit, but file a countersuit for harassment and a formal complaint against Harold Kim with the State Bar Association. "And one more thing," David added. "Let's get statements from other neighbors. I have a feeling Hoa might have targeted others too." He was right. Once we started asking around, we discovered that Hoa had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years. Mrs. Jenkins' garden gnomes had mysteriously fallen and broken. Mr. Rodriguez's holiday decorations had been reported to the HOA multiple times for excessive brightness. The Wilsons' children weren't allowed to play in their own front yard because Hoa complained about the noise. Everyone had a Hoa story, but no one had been willing to stand up to her, until now. The day of the hearing arrived. We went to the local courthouse, and Hoa showed up with her foot bandaged, limping dramatically as if she had been the victim of a heinous crime. She walked in with Harold Kim, the pompous lawyer and HOA president, the kind who talks tough to sound smart. Me? I went with Mike and David because, in all honesty, I needed their support to beat this clown show. The session began, and the judge asked her lawyer to present her case. The speech was Oscar-worthy. "My client suffered serious injuries due to a malicious act by the defendant. You installed a highly resistant structure, knowing that it could cause damage, and you didn't put up any warnings about the risk." Oh, right, now I was an evil villain who went around installing murderous letterboxes. The judge looked at me. "Sir, how do you respond to these charges?" David stood up. "Your Honor, before we respond to these baseless accusations, we'd like to address a serious ethical concern. Mr. Kim is not only representing the plaintiff in this case, but is also the president of the Homeowners Association that has filed a separate complaint against my client. This represents a clear conflict of interest." The judge frowned. "Mr. Kim, is this true?" Harold Kim shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, my roles are separate and—" "This is highly irregular," the judge interrupted. "But let's proceed with the case at hand. We'll address the ethical concerns separately." I crossed my arms and smiled. "Your Honor, my neighbor destroyed 3 of my mailboxes before that. I just wanted to make sure this one didn't get knocked over too." The judge frowned. "Do you have proof of that?" "Oh yes, I did." David took the USB stick out of his pocket, handed it to the officer, and waited while they played the video. And then the whole room watched Hoa kick my mailbox like a soccer ball. The judge stopped the video at the exact moment of impact. You could see her leg bending backwards and the look of pure pain on her face as she realized what a mistake she had made. But we weren't done. David played the second video, the one showing Harold Kim examining the mailbox at 2 a.m. and taking pictures. "Your Honor," David said, "not only did Ms. Hoa repeatedly vandalize my client's property, but her lawyer, Mr. Kim, was involved in what appears to be a conspiracy to file this frivolous lawsuit." The silence in the courtroom was beautiful. Harold Kim choked on his own argument. The judge sighed and took off his glasses. "Madam, did you kick the structure of your own free will?" She stammered. I didn't know it was so hard." The judge wiped his hands across his face, no longer patient. "Case dismissed. Next case. And Mr. Kim, I expect to see you in my chambers immediately after this session." And that's how Hoa lost for the second time. But my friend, it wasn't over yet. As we left the courtroom, Lily was waiting outside. She looked both embarrassed and relieved. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Maybe now she'll finally realize she needs help." "Don't count on it," Mike muttered. Mike was right. If Hoa had a shred of dignity, she would have accepted the judge's decision and got on with her life. But as I had already learned, this woman didn't know how to lose. She left the courtroom furious, limping, huffing, muttering words that could not be repeated in public. Her foot was still bandaged, but honestly, it was her ego that was hurting. And if I thought she was going to give up after a public humiliation in front of the judge, I was sorely mistaken, because Hoa wasn't going to rest until she tried to finish me off somehow. The problem, this time she really screwed herself. A few days after the hearing, the rumors started. The neighbors told me that she was trying to gather signatures so that I would be forced to remove my mailbox. Yes, after losing in court, her new strategy was to try to get the whole neighborhood to turn against me. And as always, the reason she used was completely ridiculous. The presence of this mailbox poses an imminent risk to the children in the neighborhood. Yes, now apparently my mailbox was a danger to public safety. The detail? There were no children in the neighborhood. The condominium was made up almost entirely of elderly people and couples without children. The closest thing we had to a child was an elderly Labrador called Max who slept all day. In other words, her excuse didn't make any sense, but Hoa didn't care about logic. She wanted to hit me anyway, only this time it backfired. After years of making her neighbors live hell with absurd rules, bogus fines, and a ridiculous obsession with the neighborhood aesthetic standard, no one was on her side anymore. When she started circulating the petition, people reacted immediately. The first lady she approached simply shut the door in her face. The second neighbor laughed and said, "Hoa, for God's sake, shut up." And the best thing? Someone with a level of petulance worthy of applause took her petition, went door to door, and turned it into the exact opposite. Yes, instead of a request to remove my mailbox, it became an official document asking to remove Hoa from the neighborhood. That someone was Mike. He didn't just collect signatures, he organized a full-blown neighborhood campaign. He printed flyers with photos of Hoa's nighttime vandalism. He set up a neighborhood watch group specifically to document her behavior. And most importantly, he found a clause in the HOA bylaws that could be used to remove not just Hoa, but Harold Kim as well. "It's called conduct unbecoming," Mike explained to a group of neighbors gathered in my living room. "Both Hoa and Kim have engaged in harassment, vandalism, and abuse of power. We have the evidence. We just need to stand together." And it was an absolute success. Within 3 days, the petition already had far more signatures than necessary, and now the neighborhood had a new goal: getting rid of Hoa. The condominium had clear rules. If a resident became a recurring problem and the board voted against them, they could be removed from the neighborhood. And after years of abuse, the neighbors finally banded together to put an end to her era of terror. Lily came to see me again during this time, looking more distressed than ever. "My mother is unraveling," she said. "She's talking about hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on everyone who signed the petition. She's not sleeping. She's not eating. I'm worried about her." I felt a moment of doubt. Had we gone too far? But then I remembered the months of harassment, the destroyed mailboxes, the lawsuit, the lies. "Lily," I said gently, "your mother needs professional help. Maybe this will finally make her see that." "Maybe," Lily agreed, though she didn't sound convinced. "But there's something else you should know. My mother has a gun." My blood ran cold. "Has she threatened anyone?" "Not explicitly," Lily said, "but she keeps saying she'll defend her property by any means necessary. I'm scared of what she might do." I immediately called Mike and David. We decided to inform the police about the potential threat and increase our security measures. David filed for a temporary restraining order based on Lily's statement. At the end of the week, I received an email from the community council. An emergency meeting had been arranged, and to my surprise, the subject was Hoa. On the day of the meeting, the community hall was packed. Everyone wanted to see the tyrant fall. Hoa walked in with her usual poise, trying to look like she wasn't worried, but you could see in her eyes that she knew she was lost. What we didn't expect was for her to bring Harold Kim and two other men in suits, lawyers, by the look of them. They sat in the front row, an intimidating presence meant to silence opposition. The leader of the board stood up, cleared his throat, and announced, "The HOA has received multiple formal complaints about Ms. Hoa's conduct. In light of this, we are putting her removal from the neighborhood to a vote." Before anyone could speak, Harold Kim stood up. "Before this proceeds, I'd like to inform everyone that my client has filed a discrimination lawsuit against this HOA. She believes she is being targeted due to her ethnicity, and we have evidence of racial slurs being used against her." A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. This was a new low, even for Hoa. Everyone knew the issue had nothing to do with her ethnicity and everything to do with her behavior. Mike stood up next. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" Kim smiled smugly. "We have recordings." And then, to everyone's surprise, Lily stood up from the back of the room. "No, you don't," she said clearly. "My mother asked me to edit audio clips to make it sound like people were saying racist things about her. I refused." The room fell silent. Hoa turned to look at her daughter, her face a mask of betrayal and fury. "You little—" "That's enough," the board leader interrupted. "Mr. Kim, making false accusations of discrimination is a serious ethical violation. I suggest you and your client reconsider your position." Hoa went white. She tried to argue, tried to blame me, tried to say it was all a conspiracy, but no one else cared what she had to say. The vote took place, and the result, unanimity. Hoa was officially expelled from the neighborhood. And when the decision was announced, I saw something I never thought I'd see. The whole neighborhood applauding. She had 30 days to sell the house and get out of there. The aftermath was swift. The State Bar Association launched an investigation into Harold Kim's conduct. He resigned as HOA president the next day and withdrew as Hoa's attorney shortly after. The lawsuit against the HOA was dropped. And my friend, it was a wonderful month. The neighbors celebrated. People who barely spoke to each other began to unite, laughing at the fall of the Queen of Tyranny. Lily came to see me, one last time, before Hoa moved out. "She's going to live with my aunt in Florida," she explained. "I've convinced her to see a therapist there. Maybe a fresh start will help her." "I hope so," I said sincerely. "And Lily, none of this was your fault. You did the right thing." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know, it's just hard to watch someone you love destroy themselves." "And what about me? Oh, I enjoyed every second of it. I made a point of stopping in front of her house every day, saying hello with a smile. Little by little, the "for sale" sign appeared in front of the house. And then one fine day, Hoa disappeared. She was gone forever. The neighborhood was finally free and my mailbox untouched. Mike and I celebrated with a barbecue for the entire neighborhood. As we raised our glasses in a toast, he grinned at me. You know what the moral of this story is, right? What's that? I asked. Never mess with a man's mailbox, especially if it's made of titanium. We all laughed, and for the first time in months, the laughter wasn't tinged with tension or fear. It was pure, genuine joy, the kind that comes when a community stands together against a bully and wins. And if you like this video, don't forget to comment and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and one more thing. My titanium mailbox is still standing strong, a monument to the greatest neighborhood war ever fought and won.